Satyamayi Parame Satyamayi Parame Satyamayi Parame Satyam Jnanam Satyam Jnanam Jyotir Aravinda Jyotir Aravinda Jyotir Aravinda. So the way we look at the world, what is the instrumentation of knowledge for us? How do we, for example, how do you know you're here? How do you know I'm in front of you? How do you know the pictures are behind? Yeah, through our senses. So the first faculty of acquiring knowledge is our senses. And we know that that itself is a limitation, because your retina is only tuned to the electromagnetic spectrum, Vibgeo part of it. So you can see my form, but you do not have the vision to see the cellular constitution that I am, or the quantum beyond the cells. I'm a field of quantum energy. You can't see that. Some of us who have the faculty of seeing the aura around, each of us is equally all that, right? Not just the physical form. So what we are seeing through our senses itself is a very limited part of the whole. Then after you see it, your mind interprets what you see and makes a thought, makes a judgment, and then you feel you know what you've seen once your mind has labeled it, judged it. But that's it. That itself is a very limited faculty, because the mother says it again and again that your mind is not only an instrument of the truth, because the mind can organize things, but it can't assess the truth ever. So whatever we know is through two layers of limitation. One, the limitation of our senses. Second, the limitation of our thoughts. So whatever we really know, it's very limited, and mother actually calls it ignorant knowledge. She says whatever you call knowledge is actually ignorant knowledge, because you don't know enough. And with our limited ignorant knowledge, we are making many narratives about life, isn't it? Narratives about ourselves, narratives about people, narratives about circumstances. And somehow it seems obvious to us that what we are thinking is true. It's in my face. How can I not believe that it's true? But is it true? That's the question. Take a simple thing like, we keep coming back to that story of Ravan. You know, his past is Jai Vijay, the gatekeeper of Vaikunt. Now, if we don't know all this, then Ravan is evil. Ravan is to be hated. He's the cause of so much suffering to so many. But if we know the whole context of how he was Vishnu's beloved Vijay and how the whole drama happened to bring him to the earth, then our whole narrative about Ravan's evil and he's a villain, it falls apart, right? So also whoever is the current Ravan in our life or whatever, to us it seems obvious that it is so, but we don't know the whole context. If we know the whole context, every Ravan in our life would be justified, right? Because everything is justified. It has a context, a place in the whole. Sri Aurobindo says, no, there's a meaning in every curve and line. So if we start living somehow not believing our narratives about ourselves, about life, about people, we'll be much happier human beings, much more pleasant human beings, and we won't do so much damage to our system, right? Quantum biology has said that your whole biochemistry changes with every thought you think. If I believe my negative narratives and I'm thinking about them, I'm actually working myself to ill health. And for something that, however right it seems, it's not the whole. It can't be the whole. It can't be the truth. So that brings us to the title, Releasing Narratives, Going from Knowledge to Wisdom. So this is from Letters on Yoga of Sri Aurobindo. The aim of this yoga is first to enter into the divine consciousness by merging into it the separative ego. Incidentally, in doing so, one finds one's true individual self, which is not the limited, vain, selfish human ego, but a portion of the divine. And secondly, to bring down the supramental consciousness on earth, to transform mind, life and body. All else can only be a result of these two aims, not the primary object of yoga. So Sri Aurobindo is saying, in a nutshell, his yoga is about escaping the separative, egoistic human consciousness we live in. So the fundamental narrative that's our prison is I exist. I am this, I have this quality, this has happened to me, that one is close to me, that one is not close to me. All that is the narrative, fundamental narrative of my sense of I. But Sri Aurobindo says in his ego, eventually we have to go beyond this. We have to see that there is no I here separate from the rest. That's the first step. So Mother's fundamental work in us is to rescue us from the ego. So every time we stop ourselves from acting out of the ego, we are consciously collaborating with her. The ego is constantly prompting us to push ourselves forward, to be seen in a certain way, to be seen better than the rest. Ego lives by comparison, and every time it pushes us to fulfill its agenda, we become unconscious. But every time we catch ourselves, no, this is my ego talking, I'm not going to be controlled by it. It's a very important step of conscious collaboration with the mother. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is to bring down the supramental light. Now, we can't really bring it down because only mother can. But mother's access to earth is each of us, right? We are the matter in which she can come if we call on her. So yeah, every time we call to Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we are really calling to the evolutionary spirit, which is very alive right now in the universe. And all of us who have an opening to this evolutionary spirit, we are open to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, because they are really the whole mechanism of evolution in this day and age. So every time we sincerely call them, in whatever way we are calling to the supramental force which they work to bring down, right? So now we move. The universe is not only a material, again Letters on Yoga, Sri Aurobindo, the universe is not only a material but a spiritual fact. It's important, he's saying this universe is not just matter, it's not a material fact, It's a spiritual fact. It's a process of an evolving spirit. Life not only a play of forces or a mental experience, but a field for the evolution of the concealed spirit. Human life will receive its fulfillment and transformation into something beyond itself only when this truth is seized and made the motive force of our existence and the means of its effective realization discovered. So he's saying that this universe is not a material fact but a spiritual fact. It's a spirit which is evolving, and he's saying human life can find its fulfillment only when it realizes this, that this is not just a play of matter. More truly, it's a play of spirit. More truly, everything we call ordinary human material is really the divine. To live with that constant realization and memory, Sri Aurobindo says, is the fulfillment of the human experience. Okay, so I'm reading his words again after the explanation. Human life will receive its fulfillment and transformation into something beyond itself only when this truth, that the universe is a spiritual fact, not a material fact, is seized and made the motive force of our existence. What does it mean to make it the motive force of our existence? The aim of whatever we do, see, right now our motive force is our ego, very plain and simple, by and large. Few moments otherwise they come, but by and large we do things for ourselves. I mean, even if we do it for our family, it's an extended ego. People we like, it's an extended ego. So we are largely living for ourselves, because we are, however many satsangs we attend and whatever we reach, at a very fundamental cellular level, I believe that I exist in this skin, and whatever is outside this skin is not really me, because I can feel what's inside this skin. So I feel it's me. Whatever's outside this skin, I don't feel it's me, because I don't sense it. But Sri Aurobindo is saying that's why it's important to grasp this truth, not only mentally but as an experience, that I actually exist everywhere because I'm one with the divine consciousness which is in all things. So whatever I do, it's not only for the ego, it's for the whole. So Sri Aurobindo says in his yoga, it's about shifting the axis of living from an egocentric existence to a theocentric existence. Theocentric is God-centric, centering around God. Whatever I do, I'm doing it for you. Not for my personal gain, but I'm doing it for you. So that becomes the motive force of our existence and the means of its effective realization discovered. The means of realization is to be found in an integral yoga, a union of all parts of our being with the divine, and a consequent transmutation of all their jarring elements into the harmony of a higher divine consciousness and existence. So, in integral yoga, we have to unite all parts of our being, the mental, physical, the vital, around the psychic. So, Sri Aurobindo writes that all problems of existence are essentially problems of harmony. There's disharmony between this part and that. And Mother further says that if you want harmony in the world outside, first bring harmony between parts of your being, because it's like our psychic wants something, our mental wants something else, our vital of emotional wants something else, our physical wants something else. So the different parts of our being themselves are not in harmony. So in integral yoga, he says that get all these different parts of yourself into harmony around the psychic. And Mother says when that happens, there'll be harmony outside, because the outside is just a mirror of what's inside. So now this is again letters on yoga on surrender. Surrender is the main power of the yoga. Sri Aurobindo keeps saying that again and again, that my yoga is not possible without surrender. So he says surrender is the main power. Why does he emphasize surrender so much in this yoga? I mean, compared to other parts, Buddhism, Vedanta, wherever, where surrender has a part. But why is surrender so fundamental to Sri Aurobindo's yoga?
Because in this yoga, the mother does the yoga.
Very good, because he says it again and again, that get it into your heads. However elite you are spiritually, however developed you are spiritually, you cannot do my yoga on your own, because it's something unprecedented. All you can do is open to the mother's force and invite her to do the yoga through you, and you can't open to her without surrender, right? If I want to do things according to my buddhi, then there is no surrender. But if in everything I do, I'm realizing that if I can do this much, if I open to the mother, through me she'll do this much. So it's very unintelligent to try and do it on my own without her. So his words on surrender. Surrender is the main power of the yoga, but the surrender is bound to be progressive. It happens in stages. A complete surrender is not possible in the beginning. He knows human nature. He's saying it's not possible for you to surrender completely in the beginning, but only a will in the being for that completeness. In fact, it takes time. Yet it is only when the surrender is complete that the full flood of the sadhana is possible. So he's saying you'll have to take baby steps in surrender, but the full flood, the full richness of the sadhana will be complete only when your surrender is complete. Till then, there must be the personal effort with an increasing reality of surrender. One calls in the power of the divine Shakti, and once that begins to come into the being, it at first supports the personal endeavor, personal effort, then progressively takes up the whole action, although the consent of the sadhak continues to always be necessary. As the force works, it brings in the different processes that are necessary for the sadhak, process of knowledge, of bhakti, of spiritualized action, of transformation of nature. The idea that they cannot be combined is an error. You can come here if you need a backrest. Come. So, what Sri Aurobindo is saying, that in the beginning surrender doesn't happen completely and fully, right? Because we may invoke the mother to begin with, and then we forget all about her and we try on our own, but it's progressive. As we keep opening to her, it happens more and more. Now, in a very practical way, what would surrender really mean? Okay, we were talking about narratives in our brain, that we all have different kind of narratives about various things, about people, about circumstances, about our life, and we try to control life so that our narrative changes to a happier one, right? I don't like this person, I try and change the person so that I'm happier in my life with him. But does that really, there's a chair there also, huh? You can sit on the chair. So, does that really ever happen? Do we ever manage to change people? Very little, no? You can try, but most of the times we can't change people, right? We can only change our narratives to a happier one, and finally to realize that our narratives are also just that. Biases, conditionings, they may not be true statements on reality. So, there's this excerpt from Michael Singer, very, very practical and doable by anyone. Okay, I'm reading it out. Thus far, my entire path to inner freedom was focused around my meditations. That was where I went to become filled with a deep sense of peace and serenity. And it was working to a degree. I could sit for hours with a beautiful flow of energy lifting me upwards. But I couldn't break through to where I longed to go. Furthermore, the personal mind always returned once I got up and became active. No, all of us. We meditate, we quieten our mind, but when we are out of it, the thoughts start again. It dawned on me that perhaps I'd been going about this in the wrong way. Instead of trying to free myself by constantly quieting the mind, perhaps I should be asking why the mind is so active. What is the motivation behind all the mental chatter? If that motivation were to be removed, the struggle would be over. Before we read further, what do you think is the motivation behind all our mental chatter? Please our ego, qualify more, yes? To protect yourselves. How do you protect yourselves? Strategies. So you protect yourself if you can maneuver life in a direction that you prefer, right? Protection is maneuvering life to go in a direction where you feel safe and happy. So it boils down to finally preferences. All my mental chatter is about pulling towards myself what I like and pushing away what I dislike. We are all on the same page? Yeah? This realization opened the door for an entirely new and exciting dimension to my practices. As I explored it inwardly, the first thing I noticed was that most of the mental activity revolved around my likes and dislikes. If my mind had a preference towards or against something, it actively talked about it. I could see that it was these mental preferences that were creating much of the ongoing dialogue about how to control everything in my life. In a bold attempt to free myself from all that, I decided to just stop listening to all the chatter about my personal preferences and instead start the willful practice of accepting what the flow of life was presenting me. Perhaps this change in focus would quiet things down inside. I started this new practice with something very simple, the weather. Could it really be so hard to just let it rain when it rains and be sunny when it's sunny without complaining about it? Apparently the mind can't do it. In the past weeks, how much have we complained about the weather, right? So what he's saying is that everything in life is unfolding through a higher intelligence which knows its business, which knows the whole. My mind only knows the part and is building a narrative based on that part. But the intelligence of the whole, for our purposes, we may call it the mother intelligence, knows everything and is doing everything with a perfection that my mind can't understand. So Singer's strategy to quieten the mind, and in a way that's what Sri Aurobindo also tells us, is moment to moment surrender. That means wherever I am, I make peace with it. Whatever comes to me, I can make an experiment like he did, that whatever life brings me, I stop quarreling with it. I stop my negative narratives about it. Of course, if it's something terrible and I need to take action and I have power to change it, I use that power, but very often we are resisting things which we have no power to change. And we are just making ourselves unhappy by creating those negative narratives and constantly believing them. So Singer saying that he made an experiment that, say, for this stipulated period of time, I'm going to say yes to everything life brings and just see where it takes me. So I started this new practice with something very simple like the weather. Could it really be so hard to just let it rain when it rains and be sunny when it's sunny without complaining about it? Apparently the mind can't do it. Why did it have to rain today? It always rains when I don't want it to. It had all week to rain. It's just not fair. I mean, it's so illogical when you hear it, but it is in a way voicing what we think, no? Or like a signal. Why did the signal turn red just now, just when I came here? You know, it's like I want the whole universe to work around me and my comfort. Look, I simply replaced all that meaningless noise with, look how beautiful, it's raining. I found these practices of acceptance very powerful. They definitely serve to quiet the mind. So I decided to push the envelope and broaden the range of events I would learn to accept. I clearly remember deciding that from now on, if life was unfolding in a certain way, and the only reason I was resisting it was because of a personal preference, I would let go of my preference and let life be in charge. Clearly, these were uncharted waters for me. Where would I end up? If my preferences were not leading me, what would happen to me? So it makes you feel very insecure, right? My whole motive to live is to fulfill my preferences. And to even think that I'm going to experiment with giving away preferences and make peace with where I am, it can lead to great insecurity. These questions did not scare me, they fascinated me. I didn't want to be in charge of my life. I wanted to be free to soar far beyond myself. I began to see this as a great experiment. What would happen to me if I just inwardly surrendered my resistance and let the flow of life be in charge? Instead of me being in charge, what if I allowed the flow of life to be in charge? The rules of the experiment were very simple. If life brought events in front of me, I would treat them as if they came to take me beyond myself. If my personal self complained, I would use each opportunity to simply let them go and surrender to what life was presenting me. This was the birth of what I came to call the surrender experiment, and I was totally prepared to see where it would take me. If I had a choice between using this real life situation to get my way or to free myself from being bound to my way, I would choose freedom every single time. That was the essence of my experiment with life. If it's down to a matter of preference, life wins. So last Saturday we didn't have class because the school I teach in JB was having its annual day, and we put together a yoga ballet for it. So it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Friday the ballet went wonderfully. Saturday, one of my main girls who was doing all the difficult poses, at 5 o'clock I get a call from her mother saying that she's running fever and she's puking and she can't come. But I'm so grateful, perhaps because all of us have been we are practicing this surrender. I didn't really feel any agitation. I just felt, okay, we are here. Now let's see what we can do. So I just got some of the other girls to replace her. And of course, it was compromised because suddenly if a girl's trying to do Natarajasana, the most advanced back bend and all, it's difficult, and she did stumble on stage. But it was such a rich experience. None of the girls panicked. I didn't panic. We just put together what we could and it turned out beautiful. I mean, I saw the stumble, but most of the audience didn't even see the stumble. So I'm saying when life throws these kind of things at you, instead of grumbling, instead of building narratives, and the narrative did start, oh my God, why is this? What? But I said, no, I'm not going to go into this narrative. If it has happened, it's good. And it was actually very good. It was such a rich experience for me and the girls to work together in the last 1 hour, substitute things, put things together and make it work anyways. So I think we were richer from the experience than if it had not happened. But if we keep grumbling that, oh my God, why did this happen? How unfortunate. Then the hidden gifts that come through all these little mishaps, we miss out on them. So Michael Singer further says, how could I possibly explain the great freedom that comes from realizing to the depth of your being that life knows what it's doing? Only direct experience can take you there. At some point, there is no more struggle, just the deep peace that comes from surrendering to a perfection that is beyond your comprehension. Beautiful words. Surrendering to a perfection that is beyond your comprehension. It was not imperfect that the girl fell ill. I'm giving you this example, but apply it to anything in your life. It's part of a perfection which is incomprehensible to my human mind. Eventually, even the mind stops resisting and the heart loses the tendency to close. The joy, excitement and freedom are simply too beautiful to give up. Once you are ready to let go of yourself, life becomes your friend, your teacher, your secret lover. When life's way becomes your way, all the noise stops and there is great peace. Such a beautiful line. When life's way becomes your way. I don't wish it any other way. To live life as if you've chosen whatever's happening in the moment. And that's really another animal. You have to really switch your mode of living to access that. But it's very worth giving it a shot. So now there's this poem called No Preferences. A call arises from within. A seeking passion climbs towards unseen peaks. For but a moment, all other desires are stilled. There is no pull to being here or escaping there. So when the mind is quiet and one is in a state of aspiration, there is no pull. I want to go there or I don't want to be here. There's no pull towards being here or escaping there. Since every container holds the same waters is the same divine presence. Every container, every circumstance holds the same waters. The futility is seen of gravitating to one pot in preference to another. Pot here is a metaphor for circumstances, for people. Every circumstance, every person holds the same divine presence. So the futility is seen of gravitating to one pot in preference to another. The restless manipulations of the mind triggered by preferences are stilled. That's what we discuss, no? All thought is restless manipulation of mind triggered by preferences. I'm thinking how to get what I want, how to move away from what I don't want. So the restless manipulations of the mind triggered by preferences are stilled. Wherever I am, these elusive waters flow, waters of the divine, drenching every moment with love. So the sages have a vision where they actually see that everything in life is a movement of love. that everything is drenched by this love. Surrender to the invisible arms that deliver me to each moment. So I feel I'm randomly taken through life, but the poet is saying there are invisible arms which are delivering me to each moment. And the poet is saying there is surrender to the invisible arms that deliver me to each moment. I let go of the compulsive need to be elsewhere. When we are wrapped up in thought, we are never happy being where we are. We always need to be somewhere else. I want to finish this so that I can go there. When I go there, I want to finish that so that I can go here. So I'm never at peace where I am. So I let go of the compulsive need to be elsewhere, fully present to the love that carves each moment. I drink in infinity from its home in the infinitesimal. Infinitesimal is the smallest particle, but infinity is in every small particle. So I'll just read it again without explanation. A call arises from within. A seeking passion climbs towards unseen peaks. For but a moment, all other desires are stilled. There is no pull to being here or escaping there. Since every container holds the same waters, the futility is seen of gravitating to one part in preference to another. The restless manipulations of the mind triggered by preferences are stilled. Wherever I am, these elusive waters flow, drenching every moment with love. Surrender to the invisible arms that deliver me to each moment. I let go of the compulsive need to be elsewhere, fully present to the love that carves each moment. I drink in infinity from its home in the infinitesimal. So now this is an aphorism by Sri Aurobindo. There are two allied powers in man, knowledge and wisdom, and he makes a very clear distinction between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is so much of the truth seen in a distorted medium as the mind arrives by its groping. Wisdom, what the eye of the divine vision sees in the spirit. So in simple words, knowledge we get through our thoughts, but wisdom arises when thoughts stop. Wisdom comes from a faculty of silence within. So for example, knowledge is a constant, let me explain this with an example. I once had a yoga student who had a lovely husband, but for some reason the husband used to have multiple affairs with various women. And this used to constantly upset her, and she would obviously have a lot of narratives about it. But she was, of course, very spiritual, very open. So one day when she was quiet, she said she just had an epiphany, and that sorted it out for her. What was her epiphany? That my husband is such a marvelous human being in every way. I mean, considerate, kind, caring, everything. He just has some hungers I can't fulfill. So let him go his way and fulfill his hungers. So long as I know that he's genuinely affectionate to me, he genuinely loves me, he's genuinely a good. Now to us it sounds, how can she think like that? But she said it came to her with such a certainty from within that after that it never ever bothered her what he was doing. So in a way, you may not call it wisdom. Some of us, I can read, you may say, but that's such a stupid way of thinking. But I do call it wisdom because it liberated her. It wasn't just a thought. It came with such a force that after that, this just never ever bothered her. So wisdom comes like that from within you. Now I'm telling you this, your mind is registering it as knowledge, so it won't be very helpful to you. God forbid if you're in the same situation and you're hearing this, it's not wisdom to you, it's knowledge to you. But if it really comes from inside you, then it's wisdom. So now Mother's commentary on this aphorism. Someone has asked me, why are the powers allied? So someone asked Mother, it starts with, why are knowledge and wisdom two allied powers, two connected powers? Why are they connected? Actually, they are disconnected. Wisdom comes from the soul and knowledge comes from the mind. I suppose that we are so used to seeing all the elements in man quarreling amongst themselves that the idea of their being allied causes astonishment. But these quarrels are only apparent, the Mother says. All the powers which come from the higher regions are in fact necessarily allied. They are united. They have agreed to fight the ignorance. And Sri Aurobindo says clearly enough for those who understand that one of these powers belongs to the mind. Which power belongs to the mind? Knowledge. And which belongs to the spirit? Wisdom. And the other to the spirit. This is precisely the profound truth that Sri Aurobindo wants to reveal in his aphorism. If the mind tries to obtain the second power, it is unable to do so, since it is a power that belongs to the spirit and arises in the human being together with the spiritual consciousness. If the mind tries to obtain the second power, wisdom, it is unable to do so, since it's a power which belongs to the spirit. Knowledge is something that the mind can obtain through much effort, although this is not the true knowledge, but only a mental aspect of knowledge, whereas wisdom does not at all belong to the mind, which is altogether incapable of obtaining it, because in fact it doesn't even know what it is. I repeat, wisdom is essentially a power of the spirit. It can only arise with the spiritual consciousness. So another example, on Thursday I was with my standard 10 class, and this girl told me that they got up in the morning and she couldn't find her PE shorts, and our PE teacher is a little strict, so the whole family was in a flap. They were looking everywhere for the shorts, and then this wise girl said she just sat down, shut her eyes and breathed. And when she opened her eyes, she was led to the exact shelf and exact cupboard where the shorts were. So these are small ways in which wisdom arises. What you can't figure out with thinking, oh, yesterday I washed it, I put it here, I put it there, and you can't find. But if you're just quiet, then something inside you tells you what to do. In little ways we can access wisdom. So it would have been interesting to ask what Sri Aurobindo means when he speaks of the truth seen in a distorted medium, because he says knowledge is so much of the truth seen in a distorted medium. First of all, what is this distorted medium, and what does the truth become in a distorted medium? As always, what Sri Aurobindo says can have several levels of meaning. One is more specific, the other more general. In the most specific sense, the distorted medium is the mental medium which works in ignorance and which is therefore unable to express truth in its purity. But since life as a whole is lived in ignorance, the distorted medium is also the earth atmosphere in its entirety distorts the truth seeking to express itself through it. And here lies the most subtle point of this aphorism. What can the mind arrive at by groping? We know that it is always groping, seeking to know, erring, returning upon its previous attempts and trying again. Its progress is very, very halting. But what can it grasp of the truth? It is a fragment, a piece, something which is still the truth, but only partially, completely. Or it is something which is no longer the truth. That is the interesting point. This is like that story of 6 blind men who'd never seen an elephant, and they touch it and they try to figure out what an elephant is. And one touches the rope and fights with touches the tail and fights with everyone that the elephant is a rope. Another one touches its ears and fights with everyone that no, elephant is a thick leathery fan. Somebody else touches his body and says it's a big pot. So each one of us, what we know through our mind, we are stating what we touch with the mind. But it's never the whole. It's always a part, and we take it for the whole. So in Savitri, there are those beautiful lines. This world is an endless masquerade. A masquerade is where everything's wearing a mask, not showing its true face, where nothing is utterly what it seems. We see a part and take it for the whole. Yeah? So that's how we are. So whatever we see, we are seeing a part and taking it for the whole. So it will always be distorted knowledge, right? It will never be true knowledge of anything. But what can it grasp of the truth? Is it a fragment, a piece, something which is still the truth but only partially, incompletely? Or is it something which is no longer the truth? That's the interesting point. We are used to being told, perhaps we have also repeated many times, that one can only have partial, incomplete, fragmentary knowledge, which therefore cannot be true knowledge. This point of view is rather trite. One need only to have studied a little in life to be aware of it. However, what Sri Aurobindo means by the truth seen in a distorted medium is far more interesting than that. Truth itself takes on another aspect. In this medium, it is no longer the truth but a distortion of the truth. So every thought you think, however true it seems, it's always and always a distortion of the truth. Are we together? Do you agree? Okay. Consequently, what can be seized of it is not a fragment which would be true, but an aspect, the false appearance of a truth which has itself melted away. I am going to give you an image, Mother says, to try to make myself understood. It is nothing more than an image. Do not take it literally. If we compare the essential truth to a sphere of immaculate, dazzling white light, we can say that in the mental medium, in the mental atmosphere, this integral white light is transformed into thousands and thousands of shades, each of which has its own distinct color, because they are all separated from one another. The medium distorts the white light and makes it appear as innumerable different colors, red, green, yellow, blue, etc., which are sometimes very discordant. And the mind seizes not a little fragment of the white light of the white sphere, but a larger number of little lights of various colors, which it cannot even reconstitute to the white light. Therefore, it cannot reach the truth. We've all done the prism experiment in school, right? White light enters, the prism scatters it into 7 colors. So the mind is that medium. White light is metaphorically the truth, the one divine consciousness. The mind is scattering to see it as many, and it can't reconstitute it back to that one. So the elephant in our metaphor is the truth, but Our mind is as blind as the blind man's eyes. So, in one mind, the elephant is distorted to become a fan, the ear. One mind is distorted to become a rope. But whatever we distort it into, it's never the true reality of that thing. Therefore, it cannot reach the truth. It does not possess fragments of the truth, but a truth that is broken up. It's a state of decomposition. The truth is a whole, and everything is necessary. The distorted medium through which you see, the mental atmosphere, is unsuited for manifestation or expression or even perception of all the elements. And one can say that the better part is lost. So it can no longer be called the truth, but rather something which in essence is true, yet no longer so at all in the mental atmosphere. It is an ignorance. To summarize, I shall say that knowledge as it can be grasped by the human mind is necessarily knowledge in ignorance. One could almost say an ignorant knowledge. So beautiful, no? All my knowledge, Mother says, is ignorant knowledge. Wisdom is the vision of truth in its essence and of its application in the manifestation. The next aphorism of Sri Aurobindo is, what the soul sees and has experienced, that it knows. The rest is appearance, prejudice and opinion. So in one stroke, Sri Aurobindo is telling you that all your thoughts is appearance, prejudice and opinion. Because thoughts, it's not what the soul has seen, right? Most of the times. So Mother says this amounts to saying that all knowledge which is not the result of the soul's vision or experience is without true value. But the question immediately arises, in fact it was put to me, how do we know what the soul sees? Yeah, okay, what I'm seeing with my thought isn't true. But how can I know the truth? How can I know what the soul sees? Mother says, obviously there is only one solution: to become conscious of one's soul. And this completes the aphorism. Unless one is conscious of one's soul, one does not have true knowledge. Therefore, the first effort must be to find the soul within, to unite with it and allow it to govern one's life. Some people ask, how do we know whether this is the soul? I have already answered this question several times. Those who ask this question by the very fact of asking it prove that they are not conscious of their souls. Because as soon as you are conscious of your soul and identified with it, you have a positive knowledge of it, and you no longer ask how you are to know. And that experience can neither be counterfeited nor imagined. You cannot pretend to be in contact with your soul. It is something which cannot be contrived or counterfeited. When the soul governs your life, you know it with absolute certainty, and you no longer ask any questions. But the usefulness of the aphorism we have just read, what is the aphorism? What the soul sees and has experienced, that it knows. The rest is appearance, prejudice and opinion. So she's saying the usefulness of the aphorism is to make you understand that everything you think you know, everything you have learned, anything that has come to you in your life through personal observation, deduction, comparison, all that is very relative knowledge on which you cannot found a durable and truly effective way of life. How many times we have repeated this? All that comes from the mind is wholly relative. Today the mind will convince you this person is the worst thing in your life. 2 days later you'll feel not so bad, I'm glad this person's in my life. So what you think today, the mind will solicit a totally different thing tomorrow. The more the mind is educated and has applied itself to various disciplines, the more it becomes capable of proving that what it puts forward or what it says is true. One can prove the truth of anything by reasoning. That's what debates are, no? We've taken part in debates in school. Suppose I'm given a topic which I don't believe is true, but if it's the topic I have to argue about, I'll find so much convincing reasoning to prove it, right? With reason you can prove anything. It remains an opinion, a prejudice, a knowledge based on appearances which are themselves more than dubious. So there seems to be only one way out, and that is to go in search of one's soul and to find it. It is there. It does not make a point of hiding itself. It does not play with you just to make things difficult. On the contrary, it makes great efforts to help you find it and to make itself heard. So beautiful that we have this special thing inside us which is hidden. And Mother saying that this is making great efforts for you to find it. Only between your soul and your active consciousness, there are two characters who are in the habit of making a lot of noise, the mind and the vital, thoughts and emotions. And because they make a lot of noise while the soul does not, or rather makes as little as possible, their noise prevents you from hearing the voice of the soul. When you want to know what your soul knows, you have to make an inner effort to be very attentive. And indeed, if you are attentive behind the outer noise of the mind and the vital, you can discern something very subtle, very quiet, very peaceful, which knows and says what it knows. So that's what I gave you, this simple example of the girl, right, whose shorts were lost. Her mind was saying it's here, it's there, but when she was quiet, something within just told her, go here, it's here. So if you are attentive behind the outer noise of the mind and the vital, you can discern something very subtle, very quiet, very peaceful, which knows and says what it knows. But the insistence of the others is so imperious, while that is so quiet that you are very easily misled into listening to the one that makes most noise. Nah? The soul is quiet, the mind is noisy, and often you hear the noisy one and you don't hear the softer one. Most often you become aware only afterwards that the other one was right. It did not impose itself, it does not compel you to listen, for it is without violence. The guidance of the soul is very subtle, very soft. If you don't listen to it, it won't insist. It won't be violent like your mind, which will tell you, if you don't do this, just see what will happen to you. There'll be major FOMO, you'll miss out on this, you'll miss out on that. The voice of the soul is not like that. Okay, now to make this whole thing practical, can you identify one narrative in your mind which is constantly making you unhappy? Just raise your hand if you can identify. I'm not going to ask you to share it, of course it's personal, but can you think of one narrative? Can you? One narrative that I am going to be unhappy till this changes. I am going to be whatever, this is like that, I am, it could be a narrative about yourself. No, I'm not asking you to believe it can change. I'm just asking you to identify it, that it is so, and this story goes through my head, this belief about it see, it can't change, but why do you want it to change? Because suppose there's a person in my life, I have a strong judgment about the person, right? And I'm unhappy so long as this person follows the judgment I have. This person is rude, this person is critical, this person is like that. And so long as the person's like that, how can I be happy? That's the narrative in my head. But again, that narrative is like me, who's blind, touching an elephant, touching the ear of the elephant and thinking the elephant is a fan. So can I allow that I know only a small part of it, and based on that I've built this whole narrative. And as Mother says, all my knowing is ignorant knowledge. So just based on what she said, can I somewhere allow that it may not be completely true? My mind is convinced that it's true, but somewhere there might be an unseen dimension to it which justifies its existence, or justifies it means I won't call it bad anymore. I'll just take it as part of the flow of life. Can I? So maybe I can't with my mind. So we'll do what we did in this morning's class. We'll work with the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. So what is Shiva? Shiva is not just a god sitting on Mount Kailash, though he is also that. Every god has a form aspect and a formless aspect, right? So the formless aspect of Shiva is the stillness within us, right? Is the soul within us, which is always quiet, that Shiva. So when I say Om Namah Shivaya, I'm asking for the grace to surrender the narrative to the Shiva inside, to believe the truth of Shiva more than my narrative. So Sri Aurobindo somewhere writes that the mind is always curious to know, but in the final analysis you need to know only two things. You have a soul within and grace above. If you know this, you're good. Rest is all imagination of your mind anyway. So to surrender my narrative, which is calling this good, that bad, this fortunate, that unfortunate, to the knowing of the soul, to the Shiva within, that Shiva actually means unconditionally auspicious and good, no? So in Hindi we say, or in Sanskrit, Shiv Shiv Bolo, speak auspicious. So Shiva is faith in the eternal auspiciousness and goodness of life, which our soul always has, but which our mind distorts. So with Om Namah Shivaya, we are hoping to get rid of that distortion and go back to that truth. Okay? So let's sit tall. We do the chant in 2 tones. Some of you know it. Those of you who don't, join in as you get the chant. But as you recite it, be very clear that this is the narrative my mind is convinced about. As I chant it, I'm praying for grace to pull belief out of that narrative, because I can't disbelieve it. I need a lot of grace to actually step out of it so that I can disbelieve it. So Om Namah Shivaya, I'm praying for that grace. Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Just repeat this with me. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Now it's a different tune. Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. With me? Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Now all together. Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namah. Now put your right hand at the center of your chest, left palm over it, and focus on a space behind where your palms touch, center of your chest. Inhale, mentally articulating Om. Exhale, mentally articulating Namah Shivaya. As if you're offering, you're surrendering this narrative to the truth within. The narrative is distorted truth. Let it be restored to the original truth in my heart. So as I'm saying Om Namah Shivaya, the aspiration is, let me actually believe that the narrative is just that. And so it has no power to make me unhappy anymore. 2 minutes quietly with that. Last chant of Om Namah Shivaya soundlessly in your heart. And then hands in a Namaste. 3 Oms to conclude.